In the summer of 2011, the Bitterroot Mountains were packed with hikers, escaping the July heat, and 17-year-old Evan Miller was one of them. He wasn't the athletic type, but he loved the forest. The quiet, the smell of pine sap, the feeling of freedom you can't get anywhere else. He and his two best friends, Tyler and Mason, planned a simple day hike on a trail they'd walked dozens of times. The morning felt normal, sunlight streaming through the trees, the crunch of gravel under their boots, and the usual jokes echoing through the canyon. But as they climbed higher, Evan kept glancing over his shoulder. Something about the woods felt off. Too still. Even the birds seemed to be avoiding this part of the trail. About 4 miles in, the boys reached a stretch of the ridge known for its steep drop and narrow path. Tyler walked ahead, while Mason lagged behind checking his phone, leaving Evan in the middle. That's when he heard it. A sharp, piercing whistle that cut through the silence like glass breaking underwater. It didn't sound like anything human. It was too clean, too high, too perfect. Evan froze and glanced back, expecting to see a hiker or maybe a hunter, but the trail behind him was empty. Not even a branch moved. He called out to his friends, but they didn't respond. The whistle came again, closer this time, almost brushing against his ear, and the air suddenly felt colder, heavier, as if the forest had taken a deep breath. Then it hit him, an instant brutal tightening inside his throat. Evan dropped to his knees, clawing at his neck as the whistle echoed a third time, this one so loud it vibrated through his skull. His vision blurred, his lungs refusing to expand, as if someone's invisible hands were squeezing them shut. Tyler rushed back, shouting his name, while Mason panicked, shaking him and begging him to breathe. Evan's lips turned blue, his eyes rolled back, and for a moment the world around him vanished into a hollow ringing. And just before he blacked out, he swore he saw someone or something standing between the trees, motionless, watching him collapse as the forest sank into a suffocating silence. In the months after the 2011 incident, Evan tried to convince himself the collapse was just some freak medical episode. The doctors called it temporary airway obstruction, which sounded official enough to ignore. But the symptoms didn't go away. At first, it was small things, tightness in his throat when he laughed too hard, short bursts of coughing that came out of nowhere, a strange metallic taste that lingered at the back of his tongue. He thought it was stress or maybe allergies until the episodes started happening, even when he was completely relaxed, sitting at home or trying to sleep. His friends moved on, life went back to normal, but Evan never felt normal again. It was like something inside him was waiting, tightening, waking. By the time he turned 20, the symptoms had grown darker. He'd wake up at night choking so violently his vision went white, gripping the edges of his bed as if someone were forcing his breath out. His mother would rush in, terrified, but the second she turned on the light, the choking stopped instantly. Doctors ran test after test, but every scan came back clean. No swelling, no obstruction, no trauma. Maybe it's psychological, one doctor suggested. Evan wanted to believe that, but he couldn't explain the other changes. Why he felt vibrations, humming in his throat, sometimes like a faint echo of the whistle he heard that day, or why he'd hear faint whispers when he stood alone in the shower, whispers that stopped the moment he stepped out. By 2022, things had gotten worse, much worse. The episodes weren't just choking anymore. Evan began hearing the whistle again, quietly at first, like a memory replaying somewhere deep in his skull. Sometimes it came in dreams, sometimes in the middle of the day, while he was driving or grocery shopping. He'd freeze, gripping his throat, certain something was lodged there, scraping with every swallow. At night, he'd bolt upright in bed, convinced someone was standing right next to him, leaning close enough that he could feel breath on his neck. His girlfriend broke up with him after witnessing one of the episodes. Avon jerking awake, gasping, whispering, "It's inside me," without remembering any of it the next morning. His life was falling apart, and the thing in his throat, whatever it was only getting stronger. By early 2023, Evan's episodes had become impossible to ignore. One morning, he collapsed in his apartment bathroom, coughing so violently that blood splattered across the sink and mirror. His mother found him slumped on the floor, barely conscious, and rushed him to the ER. This time, the doctors didn't brush it off. They ordered a full series of advanced scans, deeper and more detailed than anything he'd had before. Avon lay on the cold metal table, throat burning, chest tight, as the machine hummed around him. For the first time in 12 years, he felt a strange sense of dread. Not because of what they might find, but because some part of him already knew. Something had been hiding inside him all this time. When the results came in, the radiologist reviewing the scans stopped speaking mid-sentence. She zoomed in again, then again, her face tightening, her fingers trembling slightly above the keyboard. Evan watched her expression change, confusion, disbelief, then something that looked a lot like fear. She called in another doctor without looking at him, whispering urgently while pointing at the screen. Evan forced himself to sit up, throat pulsing painfully, as both doctors stared at the monitor like they were seeing something they'd only heard about in stories. One doctor finally cleared his throat and asked Evan, "Have you ever swallowed anything sharp? Any accidents? Any foreign objects?" His voice was too careful, too slow. Evan shook his head. He knew they weren't asking about something he swallowed. They were asking about something that shouldn't be there at all. They ran a scope down his throat to confirm what the scans showed. As the camera passed his vocal cords, one of the doctors flinched. Lodged deep in the soft tissue, partially fused to the lining of his airway, was a small object, dark, misshapen, and coated in layers of hardened mud like residue. It wasn't metallic, wasn't organic, and wasn't shaped like anything that could accidentally slip into someone's throat. A faint scraping sound echoed through the scope's audio feed, like something vibrating against the instrument. Avon felt a jolt of pain as the tool got close, a sharp pulse that shot up to his ears. The doctor pulled the scope back immediately, exchanging a silent look with his colleague. Both men stepped away from the bed, pale and rattled, as the older doctor muttered, "Whatever that is, it's been in there a long time, and it's not supposed to be." When the surgeons finally prepared to remove the object, they warned Evan's mother that the procedure would be delicate. Whatever was lodged in his throat had become almost part of him. The operating room was silent, except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. As the first incision was made, something unexpected happened. The oxygen monitor spiked, then dropped, then spiked again, as if Evan's body were reacting to the object being disturbed. The surgeon paused, confused, then continued carefully. The deeper they went, the more resistance they felt. Not physical resistance, but something stranger, like the tissue around the object was pulsing or tightening on its own. At one point, the lights above the table flickered, causing a ripple of nervous glances among the staff. Nobody said it aloud, but everyone in the room felt it. Something about this object did not want to be removed. After nearly 40 minutes of meticulous work, the surgeon finally lifted it out. A small, mud-caked object no bigger than a thumb, rigid and oddly warm for something that had just been exposed to cold surgical air. A nurse gasped when she wiped the surface clean. It wasn't stone or metal or anything modern. It was carved wood, darkened with age, its edges smoothed like it had been handled countless times. Down its center was a hollow slit, just enough for air to pass through. It wasn't just an object. It was a whistle, a handmade one. The moment the slit was exposed, a faint high-pitched hum vibrated through the table, causing the metal surgical trays to tremble. None of the instruments were touched. None of the staff moved. The sound came from the whistle itself, like residual breath trapped inside for 12 long years. When the whistle was fully cleaned, the surgeon called in an anthropologist affiliated with the hospital, someone who studied indigenous artifacts. The man walked in casually, but the second he saw the whistle, his expression hardened. Burned into the wood were ancient boundary symbols, markings traditionally used by certain tribes to warn travelers not to cross into cursed or forbidden parts of the forest. "This is not a toy," he said quietly, tracing the symbols with a gloved finger. These were carved to keep something out or keep something in. Evan's mother stared at him, horrified, while the surgeon asked how such an object could end up inside a living person without killing them instantly. The anthropologist didn't answer. His eyes remained locked on the whistle, and all he said, barely above a whisper, was, "Whatever this belonged to, it doesn't lose things by accident." In the days after the whistle was removed, Evan expected to feel relief, like a weight had finally been lifted from his throat. But instead, everything felt wrong. His apartment, once quiet, now seemed to breathe around him. Shadows stretched farther than they should. At night, he'd wake up drenched in sweat, gasping not because he couldn't breathe, but because he felt breath on his neck. Slow, steady, deliberate. The doctors insisted his recovery was normal, but his body said otherwise. His chest trembled. His throat vibrated. And every time he blinked into the dark, he felt like someone else was blinking back. Then the whistle started making noise again, despite being locked away in a hospital evidence room. Nurses reported hearing faint high-pitched tones in the hallways, like someone softly blowing across glass. One janitor quit after sweeping near the storage room and hearing what he described as a voice, like someone whispering through a flute. Security footage showed the container holding the whistle slightly shifting at night, rotating inch by inch on its own. Doctors blamed temperature changes, but no one believed it. Even the anthropologist stopped coming by. He refused to speak to anyone, insisting the whistle should never have been moved, never been touched, never been taken from the place it belonged. But the worst signs followed Evan. Birds died near his apartment window. Neighbors complained of strange, whistling sounds in the stairwell at 3 a.m. His phone recorded audio on its own, long clips of breathy tones, layered voices, and something that sounded disturbingly like footsteps circling his bed. And Evan, who once thought the object was the source of his torment, realized something far more terrifying. Removing the whistle didn't free him. It awakened whatever had been searching for it, and each night, the sound grew closer. like something was tracing the path back to him, step by step, breath by breath, whistle by whistle. 3 nights after the hospital released him, Evan woke to the sound again. The same perfect, unbroken whistle that had followed him since he was 17. Only this time it wasn't faint or distant. It was inside his apartment. He sat up slowly, his breath shaking. The room was ice cold, the kind of cold that feels intentional, like someone brought it with them. The whistle echoed again, this time from the hallway, then from the kitchen, then from right behind his bedroom door, as if whatever held the whistle for all those years was searching each room, getting closer with every breath. Evan stood, throat trembling, and forced himself to open the door. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then died. In the darkness, the whistle stopped. For a moment, silence swallowed the entire apartment. Evan barely breathed, barely blinked, until he heard it, a slow exhale, inches from his ear. He turned, but no one was there. Then, just before the lights flickered back on, a low voice, thin, hollow, and impossibly close, whispered, "You carried it for me, now I carry you." The whistle screamed one final time, loud enough to rattle the walls, and Evan Miller was never seen again. Only the whistle was found, lying on the floor of his empty bedroom, still warm.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.